Hey, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Kyle Sells Biz podcast, Off the Record. I'm excited to be back here for another exciting week. We've done this podcast previously via the LinkedIn audio platform, but now we are live in person here on video to get a chance to see us in the flesh, in the face, and connect with us here. This podcast is geared towards business owners and professionals that service clients in the mergers and acquisition space. You're either tuned in because you are considering an exit or sale or acquisition of a business, or you represent clients that are in the process of buying or selling a company. Every week, we bring different industry experts with different background, whether it be business owners, professionals, like our special guest today, Marc Snyderman, or others that specialize in the mergers and acquisitions space. Today, I'm extremely excited to have Marc Snyderman join us. He's a tenured attorney. He's a partner with OGC Solutions, which is a 20-attorney firm in Northern New Jersey, specializing in disruptive lawyering. So we can learn a little bit more about what that means. Disruptive lawyering. I'm excited to learn more about that. He's also the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel for UAT, a titanium process and research company, as well as managing partner of both Next Point Ventures, LLC, as well as Wellbridge Capital. So I want to learn more about those ventures, Marc. So happy for you to share that information with us. He's a lawyer, disruptor, entrepreneur, angel investor, educator, and speaker. He provides practical and strategic business and legal solutions to small and medium-sized businesses at below market rates in a unique subscription model. And one more accolade we're going to add to this: Marc is also an advisor and member with the Eminae Network and is based out in New Jersey. And Marc will be speaking on one of our roundtables next week, Tuesday. We're going to learn a little bit more about that, get a chance to meet Marc in person. If you like what Marc shares today, you definitely want to meet him in person and connect with him in his office for our roundtable. So with that being said, so Marc, this is totally off record, off scripted. So that's a disclaimer. Don't believe anything you're hearing today. Essentially, we won't keep it casual, keep it going, but do like to learn more about our guest's background, like why you got into legal as an attorney, and more specifically in the M&A space. So welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the kind introduction. That's makes me sound like I know what I'm doing. I don't really profess to know that much, but I've been doing it a long time, so you kind of pick up some things along the way. It's funny, like I started my a lot of people say that they wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer from the time I was in I think it was third or fourth grade. We did a mock trial for Hansel and Gretel, and I was a defense attorney for Hansel and Gretel in the trial against them stealing from the witch.
Interesting.
And so it started back then. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to be a lawyer. And, obviously, your path changes along the way, but that actually never changed. Like I went straight through college, undergraduate to law school, got out of law school. And by the time I got out of law school, I knew that I wanted to do corporate and securities law. And I didn't really want to I wasn't going to do any criminal law. I wasn't going to do anything like that. During law school, I had everything from, I worked my way through law school in different law firms. So I did personal injury medical malpractice. I did, commercial litigation. I worked in a criminal law firm. And then my last year, I ended up at the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, which is now defunct, right? But now defunct Philadelphia Stock Exchange in their legal department as an extern, and it was a great experience. And I kind of learned that I really liked being sort of around corporations and business, and I gravitated towards business consulting and that sort of vibe. And so when I left there and I got my first job in Manhattan as a lawyer, it was in a corporate and securities firm. And so that was kind of the start of it all for me. And I immediately learned pretty quick. I learned pretty quickly that I wanted to go in-house and I wanted to work in a company because I wanted to kind of focus more on what a company was like and learn it from the inside. I was fortunate enough to get pulled into one of the cable companies when they were going public, only 18 months out of law school. It's the dream for every young attorney, right? You're going to go in, you're going to get pulled into an IPO. You're going to buy at the IPO. You're going to get options. Stock's going to fly. You're going to make a ton of money. It's going to be great. Of course, the stock opened I remember the stock opening at 24.5, and within, you're in a 6-month lockup when you buy at when you're in with the original IPO, because you can't do anything with your shares. And I remember leveraging everything I had, which wasn't much, to buy into the IPO. And 6 months later, the stock was at 17 and was just on a free fall. And I sold everything. And everybody's like, "You're crazy. Why are you selling? Why are you selling?" I was like, "This isn't going anywhere." But it was a great experience for 6 years. We did a ton of M&A work at the time.
Wow.
And it's kind of where I really picked up like the desire to do this, because we were raising money and buying cable systems left and right. So, we were able to buy small systems, bigger systems. So I was really involved in the process from front to back, throughout that whole time. So it was really like, it got real for me. And it was a lot of really good experience, and I worked with great attorneys and, great outside counsel. So really learned a lot of the good ways to do things, but you also saw a lot of the bad things. Right. And that's all part of it. My career kind of takes a turn because I turn from there. When I leave the cable company, I go to a small engineering and IT services firm that was doing mostly work for the Department of Defense. There were about 75 employees at the time. Nice company, but back down in South Jersey, where I originally was from. And when I was there for a few years, they didn't have a legal department. I was kind of building out a lot of functions. They needed a lawyer to handle some outside litigation at the time. I was managing that and kind of got out of that and just started picking up other things to do. And within a few years, they were kind of like, "You know what, you really have a knack for this business. Would you like to kind of run the business?" And they named me chief operating officer. I ran the company for about 10 years after that. We went on a huge growth run. We had just really good vision for where we could be. And we did some strategic acquisitions along the way. So I've been a buyer. I've been a seller. I've been on a legal side. I've been on every side of M&A. So when I got out and when I left the company in 2016 and started my firm, it was kind of all about what would I do differently, as an attorney. And what I noticed was there's a huge hole in the market for somebody to represent small and mid-sized businesses, not only on the M&A side, but just as a whole, right? It's a very underrepresented market. And when I said, "Well, why is it underrepresented?" It's underrepresented because the model for law firms these days is billable rate, billable hour, right? And billable hours have gotten completely out of hand. I mean, in the North Jersey, New York market, or even in the Philadelphia market, it's not unreasonable it's unreasonable, but it's not it's not unheard of for attorneys to be charging $1,000 an hour, $1,200 an hour. So think about it as a small or mid-sized business. You have a question. Are you going to call your attorney with the chance that they may spend 4 hours on the weekend and you get a $5,000 bill?
Yeah, that clock starts ticking right as soon as they make that phone call. So they're hesitant.
Yeah. So you hesitate. So what do? You Google it, right? And there's a lot of great stuff out there on the internet, right? You can find a lot of information. The problem is that you as a non-lawyer, as a non-trained lawyer, you may get 80% of the way there, but the 20% that you don't know, that you're hiring a lawyer to know, you're going to miss it. And it's where a lot of problems come about, because people, will go out and do it. And you can't blame them. The cost is too high. So I came up with this disruptive lawyering model, which was, what if you flip the whole thing upside down and you said, it doesn't have to be billable hour. What if it could run like a regular business, right? Run it like a startup. Keep yourself lean. You don't need huge offices. Go to your clients. Your clients, even if your clients are going to come to you, you don't need the penthouse on Fifth Avenue, with a library that's the size of most people's, houses.
Right.
There's no need for it. Who cares? What are you doing with it? And if you take all those costs down and you reduce your staff down to what you really need, and you only keep around people that are going to be hugely supportive of what you do and they're integral to your operations, and use technology the way it should be used. You can use AI, you can use tools, you can use Slack, you can use all these things. They're all available to you, but law firms shun it all. So if you ran it differently and said, we're going to adopt all those things, you could keep your prices down, and then you could go to what we call a subscription model, right? And some people use subscription model in a term of saying, well, you can buy packages of hours, right? Like you get 5 hours a month.
I was just about to ask you that.
No, we don't do that. It's an unfettered, uncapped number, right? So I have clients that, they pay a monthly fee. They call, text, and email me all the time. Now people say, how can you manage that? That's crazy, right? You're never gonna be paid enough. And my whole thing is, well, I have a steady income. That's a pretty big win in a consultant basis, as you know, right? The biggest problem of consulting and anything that's built is you're up and down so much. So if you can flat your revenues out, you're in a pretty good place, right? So you're pretty happy. You know what your expenses are. You can run your business, and also you can once you're ingrained and entrenched in a client and you know their business, the calls get shorter and shorter, right? I don't need a huge explanation. I know where my clients are most days. I have clients that I know he'll text me and say, hey, I'm running to this, this is what I'm doing this week. Why does he tell me that? Because I'm part of his team. And he knows that if something comes up, he can just shout at me or shoot me a text. I know where he's going. I say, hey, did you, he'll set me, I'll text him in the morning. Hey, did you remember to get that NDA signed before you go to the meeting?
Yeah, you have a deeper relationship with your clients, your in-house counsel, you're there at their beck and call. Are they not feeling that you're watching the clock every time they call you, right? So it's a more open conversation, more, I love it. Marc, let me ask you, so what's like most rewarding for you, right? What's most rewarding for your work that you're doing currently right now at Eminae? What gets you up every morning? What's put that smile on your face? What's
it's still the deal, right? The deal is still a lot of fun, right? To make sure, to try to get people, that want to do something that, you have a seller that wants to sell, you have a buyer that wants to buy, and finding that happy medium where everybody, where you can get to the deal and that everybody's walking away with something that makes sense to them. There's still a lot of fun. That's still a fun thing to do.
Awesome. So I appreciate the back. I like to hear folks' journey. It almost sounds like your journey just played. Does it fall in exactly how you planned it? Because it sounds like each chapter in your life was just interconnected, and you just landed where you envisioned.
Yeah, no, I mean it sounds a whole lot easier than it was. Like that's like I can tell you that so like when I first moved to Manhattan out of law school, I went to law school at Rutgers in Camden, New Jersey, and when I moved to New York. A Rutgers degree in New York City was meaningless, right? Which sounds crazy because Rutgers is we're from Jersey. We all look at Rutgers like it's a great school because it is a very good school. It's a top tier school. But in New York City, New York is its own beast. It back then, I mean, I'm old, right? I crossed the 50 number. I'm still of the age where my first law firm, we didn't have email, right? So I'm that old, but. When I moved up there, you couldn't get a job as a Rutgers lawyer, right? Unless you were top of the class. Well, I was working my way through school, so I wasn't quite the top of my class.
Right.
But I temped. I did all that kind of stuff. I ended up writing an article. This is how I got my first job as a lawyer in Manhattan. I wrote an article that was published as an op-ed piece in the New York Law Journal. That was basically about how awful it is to be a temp lawyer in Manhattan. And how like it literally could be the worst job you could ever have in your life. As a lawyer, like it was the bottom of the barrel, and the treatment was terrible, everything about it. And I didn't understand why I couldn't find a real job. And that op-ed piece got me 4 calls from law firms.
The interesting thing is about being relatable, right? You're just being transparent, honest, and you're just sharing your story. And clients can relate that. Clients really care that you went to the top Ivy League schools and best law, law graduate programs. I mean, essentially, can you do the job? Do you understand my business? Do you understand me? And can you help me, right? So that's essentially what's most important. They don't care about, I have 2 credentials here, you see, but number one's a client. Hey, say, are you a certified intermediary? Are you a certified eminent? They don't give a crap about that. They want to know, do you care? Do you understand? What can you do for me? Right? So
exactly.
So let's jump into the meat of our conversation here, right?
Sure.
Can we transition? So
Yeah, of
let's
course.
talk about the importance of being prepared, right? And this
Yeah.
could be a whole day conference, by the way, because I can
yeah.
go on an hour rant about preparation, because 9 out of 10 clients that contact me that want to sell their business or buy a business, they're totally not prepared. They don't have the right
Right.
attorney, right counsel, right CPA, the right knowledge necessary need. They don't have to understand the marketplace at all. They don't understand the value of their business. I did a conference yesterday at the Marriott Melville, the Thrive conference, and I spoke about there's this gap, this evaluation gap that buyers and sellers have, right? Whereas sellers are just reaching for the stars and thinking their business is worth 10 times more than it's worth. And on the other end, buyers have been actually pulling back in the evaluation as far as what they want to pay for the price or pay for the business. So there's this huge gap. Neither party really fully understands the true value of that business. But let's just talk about it. Why is it essential for both sellers and buyers to be well prepared for an M&A transaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the biggest reasons why the transactions fail, not only do they fail to ever close, or even once they've closed, they fail to be successful for the businesses, right? It happens all the time. Actually, I mean, statistically, it happens more often than not. And I've been through a lot of transactions. I pride myself in that. If I take on a transaction, it's going to get to close. Now I'll do everything I can to get it there, but there are ones that do not close, right?
Yeah,
they fall apart. And the biggest reason why they fell apart is people weren't prepared. They didn't have the right documentation prepped. They didn't have their data rooms right. They didn't have the right experts. I was in a transaction recently, a large transaction, private equity deal, and the attorney on the seller side was a bankruptcy attorney. You have the wrong person in the wrong job. He's a phenomenal attorney, very knowledgeable, but not knowledgeable in M&A. And think about the worst person you could have involved in an M&A transaction. It's a bankruptcy person. It's somebody that's thinking of what is the absolute worst case scenario of every single thing that could ever go wrong here.
Right.
And so what the points they were arguing and the points they were trying to make made it so that there was no way. It made it so hard to get through to a transaction. And he's advising the seller. The seller thinks that that's what they're supposed to be doing. And you're trying to say, well, none of this is market. None of this is the way things are done. You have to have people that understand the market and what the conditions are around the transactions.
Yeah.
Right. So as you said, right now it is definitely a problem for buyers because the biggest problem is money's expensive again.
Correct.
I think they just raised their they raised the prime again. I mean, it's up in the 8s. I mean, you're gonna do an SBA loan at 8.25 plus 2 or 3%. Your money costs you a lot. It costs you a lot of money to buy a business right now. So the returns have to be much higher. Yep. So how do you make sure that is right? Make sure you have the right accountant and the right financial advisors around you, helping you put together projections and numbers that make sense.
Yeah.
Make sure your pitch deck and your book look right. And then you got to get into all the rest of it, which is, what are you actually going to put into a data room? And have you cleaned up the documents before you even put them in the data room? Right. How many times have you seen where somebody they put a whole set of agreements in the data room and half of them are unsigned? What do those mean? To the attorney on the other side, they mean nothing. They're looking at them saying, you don't have any signed agreements. You don't have anything, and it just, all those little things when I watch, it's funny because you watch the transactions, and unfortunately, I've seen transactions slowing down a lot. I don't know if you've seen the same thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're so much slower than they ever were. Everybody moves at a snail's pace. And by moving at a snail's pace, you run a lot closer to deals dying because people have too much time to think. They'll just rethink it. And it just sort of spirals downward. And I've had a lot of that recently. I don't know if you're seeing a lot of that in the market as well.
You want to make my heart race or what? I don't want to go there right now. Yeah, we have had. There's people think it's easy to do what we do and easy it's a lot of work, and all the parties have to be on the same page. The attorney, the CPA, even the financial plan. I can't tell how many times we had to go back and negotiate deals because the client never completed a retirement plan and wanted to do the plan during due diligence. Like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to retire. I think I need an additional $500,000 to fund my retirement. Can you go back and get some more money? No, it doesn't work that way, right? So that preparation is key. And not only knowing your business, but to your point, understanding the marketplace. So the cost of capital is a big one. Another big one right now is workforce issues, right? But employment, right?
Yeah.
In some industries, let's think about like HVAC, for example, industries where you need some sort of technical expertise, right? Technology, IT companies, and so on. It's tough to find skilled labor. It's tough to find key personnel. So if I'm buying your business, I don't know your business that well. For me to grow your business from 10 to 20 million, I have to bring in some additional labor to help grow the business. So sellers have to understand that buyers are going to have to put in money in your business, and it is a risk on both sides. So great points there. Maybe
the labor and employment one's really interesting because like that's an area where you could see sellers that can help themselves, right? They can help themselves. Like, so if you're, like, say you're running a machine shop and you're trying to sell a machine shop, which is, there's a lot of them around in New Jersey, right? It's just small mom and pop kind of family owned machine shops that have gotten pretty decent size and are all, they're all at that generational piece where they need to start figuring out, what do I do next? So, labor is a huge issue, right? Just as you said for HVAC, where are you going to find the technical skills to get there? So you can build relationships with local colleges, right? With trade schools where you have a feeder program. And if you build those, so those are things where I say, like, when we come in as, outside attorneys, outside, specialists and people like yourself that understand the market and what it's going to take to sell your business, these are longer term planning that you can do where you can build those relationships. So when I come in to buy your business, and I say, well, labor is a huge issue. No, I don't have a big labor issue. So, well, how's that possible? Well, we have a relationship with, the county college that's up the street that has a program in CNC machining, and we support them, and they give us interns, and we take those interns and we turn them into skilled labor. Now you've changed the game, right? You've taken your business to a different, and made it completely a sellable business when it might have been this is going to be a hard sell for us.
Yeah. And on the reverse end, you have companies that are laying off, they're cutting costs and laying off staff. So, and as a buyer coming in, okay, well, understand you're cutting costs here, but, are any of these people essential? And can these employees they lay off can they become my competition now, right? So
right, exactly.
On both sides of the spectrum, it can be a challenge. So
the
labor is a very tough one. That's why I love talking to people that are involved in operations and HR, because I believe people run businesses. Business is personal, and
100%.
And understanding the people aspect to your business is key. And as counsel coming in, you want to understand who are the key people besides just the owner, who's the second in command. And when you talk about succession plan and so on, who else can take over operations in the event that the owner can no longer operate? So awesome stuff. Let's talk. We tapped a little bit on due diligence, right? Can you explain your role in the due diligence process? Because
Sure.
When you evaluate a deal, you have different aspects of due diligence, right? You have the financial due diligence. In your case, legal due diligence.
Yeah, there's financial,
IT,
there's legal, operational, IT, HR. I would say, the lawyers tend, I'm a little different, right? Because I have a lot of operational experience. So sometimes people will ask me to look a little deeper. From just the straight legal side, we're usually looking at, all the corporate documents, right, to make sure that the company is properly formed and they're authorized to do business in the right jurisdictions, right? That's a huge one that is almost always wrong, right? If companies are doing business in multiple states, do they have the right? Are they set up correctly? Have they paid all their annual reports and all their jurisdictions, everything up to date? Is their corporate documents straight? Do they have board of directors meetings? Do they have shareholders meetings? Are they doing any of those things? The answer to that 90% of the time is no. We haven't done any of that. But so that's from the buyer side. From the seller side, had you had your attorney looking at it, your attorney would have helped you put those things together so that they were ready and they were prepared, right? So We do the legal side. We do all the contracts, right? So you got to look at all the contracts and the leases and whatever's out there.
And the contract is big too, because you may have some employees there that are not don't have employment agreements.
Oh yeah, exactly.
As a buyer,
you run on both sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's big risk in terms of who's locked into the company, who's not locked into the company.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look for, people make promises to people all the time. You find out that there's phantom stock that exists that nobody even knows. Oh, I forgot I did that. Well, they didn't forget, and we got to figure out how we're going to handle this as part of the transaction. So the due diligence kind of is like, I would say like, like I would equate the whole thing to selling your house, because it's a lot easier for people to understand, right? When you go to sell your house, what do? You have a couple steps you're going to take, right? You're going to call a realtor. What's the realtor going to do? The realtor's going to come to your house and it's going to tell you, hey, you need to paint this room. You need to paint this room. These closets are too cluttered up. Get this stuff out of the house, depersonalize the house, get all your pictures, get some pictures down. You can't have all your family everywhere,
Right.
All the normal stuff that you do, right? And everybody knows about this stuff, right? They know about staging a house. They know about this. Well, do the same thing for your business, right? You have to prepare it as you're ready to get ready to sell it, right? So that means, make sure that your agreements are clean, right? A lot of times people will have contracts and then they amended those contracts, but they never put any amendments in writing. Well, clean that up. It might be a critical piece of the business, right? If that's your critical revenue and it's your number one client, your biggest client, and you don't have an agreement with them, what do you really have? You don't have much.
Yeah.
You don't have much. You have some goodwill and you have some relationship, but that's not going to cut it for the buyer that's doing their due diligence, saying, hey, you told me you had this contract. You don't even have a contract with them. What's the value in it now? I put a number on this based on you saying this was all here. Now I see that it's not really here. You don't really have a 3-year deal. You have a month-to-month deal. That's a totally different game. How am I supposed to know I'm going to get the revenue out of this to get my ROI out of the transaction? So it's really it's a lot of thinking, and that just requires having the right professionals around you to help you do that. And the problem with all buyers and sellers is, at the same time, they're trying to run the business, right? They also have a business to run day to day, whether they're buying or selling. So if you don't engage professionals, that's when these transactions just slide. And as you know, the longer they slide, the more likely it's going to slide off the base path, right?
There's a saying that time kills deals, right? So
100%.
Every day you got to move forward. You have a checklist. You have you have a cutoff time to get certain things done. You want to keep everything moving forward. Get into parties involved quickly and get things moving.
Yeah, and these days, with the advancements in in digital and where we're at, due diligence is a whole lot easier than it ever was, right? We used to have to go. The attorney used to have to go on site. You'd have to pour through documents. You'd be sitting in a room with HR with all this stuff for days, right?
Yep.
And it cost a fortune because you had to have people on site doing it. Now there's you can build a data room. You can run artificial intelligence over documents to see what they are, and all those tools are available to all of us, right?
Yep.
And you can't be afraid of them. They're good. There's good tools out there. There's things that can really help, move the ball faster and make sure that we're seeing all the pieces we need to see and checking off all the boxes along the way.
Yeah, and you talk about preparation. The virtual data room was a game changer. So, preparing all those documents ahead of time and making sure that they are entered in the data room, as opposed to we get onto agreement, get into due diligence, and now you have to try to scan or try to upload or looking for contracts. I can't tell you how many times there were cases where you mentioned about having these phantom stock and these side arrangements done. What about the scenario where the owner of the company passed away, and now the son is running the company, and now he's finding out all these past deals that his father
oh yeah, it's all the time.
Employees.
Yeah, they find the notebook, and in the back of the notebook, he has the IOUs written. I have a client. He's an older guy. He actually has a book that in the back of his book are these like, I owe this person. Like, nobody would know this exists. Like,
Right. Right. Awesome. So we spoke about the sellers a little bit. What are some considerations that buyers should keep in mind when they're when they're targeting a company?
Yeah, so it seems so. I'll go back to the house, right? Go back to buying a
Mhm.
house. So now you're on the other side. You're going to buy a house. What do? You call a realtor, to say, hey, can you take me around this area? Well, what did you do before you picked the area? You've done your homework, right? You looked at the school system. You looked at the tax base. You looked at what retail stores are around. How far am I from supermarkets? You looked at all the things you would normally look at. So buyer has to do the same thing, right? Start figuring out what is the revenue. The other thing you do, the most important thing you do, is get pre-qualified, right? You get a
Yep.
pre-qualified mortgage. So you want to go buy a business, talk to your bank, figure out how much
Yep.
can you really spend. What are they going to loan you? What are they going to give you? Because you start looking for a business and you're looking at a $5 million EBITDA business that's trading at 6 or 7 multiple. You probably can't. You may not be able to afford it.
Hmm.
Great. You looked at this business, but you can't do it. You can't do the deal. So make sure you have your finances, at least a good understanding of what you can do before you go there. The other thing I say is really understand your culture. You have to really do a deep dive into your own culture before you can go buy something, because you need to understand what it is that drives your business. And a lot of people, people say they understand their business, but they don't really understand their business.
Hmm.
And they don't take the time to really understand what, like you said, the people. That's your real driver. And you have to understand what's motivating them. And they need to be on board with the concept of, we're going to add in some more people. We're going to
Hmm.
add in this new division. And maybe it's something that was a competitor. Maybe it's something tangential to the business. Understand, why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? Who's going to be involved in that transaction? From an onboarding and transition team, and bring those people from the beginning. A lot of one of the big mistakes I see from buyers is the CEO, maybe the CFO, maybe the head of HR are involved in the first in the acquisition, right? And then all of a sudden, there's all this stuff. They do all their own due diligence. They're doing it all. They don't have an operations SME, which either can be somebody from within the company or out of the company. Maybe a part-time COO, somebody that understands this kind of business. You might bring them in and say, hey, can you help us really take a look at this business from an operational standpoint? How are we going to integrate it? How are we going to make this all happen? People
Hmm.
always forget the IT piece. That's like, nobody thinks about it. Well, it's critical, right?
Yeah.
You just bought a whole network. You may have bought a huge liability you don't even know about.
Hmm.
You don't know what the costs are. You don't know what the expenses are related to it. Then you buy it and you find out, oh, every one of their computers is 6 years old. Their server is 10 years old. They haven't upgraded anything. They've done no patching. They have no antivirus, no nothing. And the whole network is one big risk.
Right.
What are you going to do now? You got to fix it. So I'd say, to me, the getting the right people involved from the beginning as a buyer is really important in terms of figuring out what this business is going to be, how is this going to
Hmm.
plug in, and how you're going to integrate it. Because
Hmm.
the integration, as you know, is where so much of this fails, right? Or
I
they
mean,
do the
buying a business is just step one, right? To your point
yeah,
is, so I tell my clients on the sell side, the buyer essentially is purchasing your business based upon your historical performance. Where they're going to make their real money is how they grow and improve that business. That's when they get their real return on their investment. So they got to go in and see where they can tweak.
yeah,
And you mentioned about this integration piece. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle. The IT is definitely a huge one that often gets overlooked, and marketing as well. Like controlling that messaging, right? So
exactly.
you're reaching out to employees, right? How are you going to get that that first speech out, so to speak, to control that messaging as far as is it a merger? Is it we bring on a
Yeah,
new partner?
what does this look like? How
What it
does
is, and then going out to the vendors, right? Vendors, customers, clientele. It's a lot. So you need to have someone in there can manage that post M integration. By the way, Marc, you're getting some great feedback here, man. So I see Winnie, great information.
that's great.
Marc knows business revenue strategy. Aaron, love this. Who
That's
else we
nice.
got
Very
here? We
nice.
got
Thank you.
Ezra. Always great to have the controls and process in order before any what's this, desperation? Yeah,
Desperation.
before things
Yeah.
get crazy. Exactly. And we have Lisa
Yeah.
here as well. Great conversation. So yeah, again, some great feedback. So listen, we only plan to go about 40 minutes, but we haven't gotten to best practices yet. And if you have some more time, maybe 10, 15 more minutes,
Sure.
we can probably, keep going for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. Cause
Sure. No problem.
we want to give folks everything that we got here. So, I like stories. I'm sure folks that listen love stories as well. I can go on a rant on stories. So I'll share one thing with you, Marc. Whenever I engage a new client, we do sometimes make some recommendations. The one person that we are very adamant in that they must hire is a transaction attorney like yourself. Like we
Yeah.
don't, no ifs, ands, buts about it. You mentioned about a deal you were involved with or you heard about. I think you mentioned was a personal injury attorney. It was
A bankruptcy attorney. Yeah.
bankruptcy attorney. Yeah, you want to have a specialist, right? You don't want to have someone. You don't want to have your general practice doctor doing open heart surgery, right? So you want to bring in a specialist. Can you share a success story from the past where a deal was probably going south, and because of your expertise, you came in and got the deal to the finish line?
Sure. I mean, that's actually, I think that happens more often than not. The transactional attorney will find the way to get it done. And I would say one of the big, I mean, I'm sure you see this, like if you have to say the biggest question marks in deals, usually revolves around working capital and, indemnities, right? Working capital being a
What
huge
last
one.
you said? Working capital on what?
And the indemnity structure,
Indemnity,
right?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, cap and collars and those kind of things. The working capital one is the one that always turns people, they just don't get it, right? They don't understand it. They don't get the concept of it.
Why do I have to
And
leave money in the company? Right?
exactly. Why am I leaving any money?
Yeah.
They're buying the company. I get all my cash. I get everything that I take it all with me. I take all the No, you don't. You have to it's an ongoing business. It's a going concern.
Yes.
You have to have money in there to let the money continue, to let the business continue. So I had there's deals where, you see people just start pulling money out of the companies and you say to them, hey, there's a working capital requirement here. You need to understand that you need to leave that amount of money in the business. Right. So I had one deal. It actually went south. This one actually totally went south. And it was one I was actually it was for my old company. And we had a working capital adjustment in a line item, and what we're going to require. We had all agreed to it. The seller of the business went ahead and it was the father died. The son had the business, right? Just like you said, there was all kinds of things that he had to pay off. He just started paying everybody and anybody, including himself, and just whacked all the working capital out of the business. We were a week from close, and I said, I asked for the run, for a financial run, so we could have everything ready to close. No money in the business.
Crazy.
And you're sitting there going, well, where was your attorney in this? Where's your counsel saying, hey, you can't do that because you're going to have nothing to sell. You just crushed the business. And we ended up not closing that transaction. So I gave you sort of an opposite of where, it actually went wrong rather than it going right. It's always harder to tell where you steered something right than where it's gone wrong. Because like when you're steering it right, you're just kind of you're doing that counseling along the way. You're making sure people really understand what these things are. But I would say that and recently, I've seen two deals recently where it's just been impossible to get people to understand what working capital is, and that includes the accountants that are involved. Yeah, and I look at it and I said, when there's an accountant involved, how's the accountant not understand this?
Yeah. I think I feel I'm going to do a session strictly a whole hour, because I can't tell how many times even with my clients just trying to explain working capital and it's
it's a great topic.
Yeah,
it's a great topic. Like I think
is asking us like it's like this is an accountant, but it is a negotiable. It is negotiable. So it's some gray areas, right? And
exactly.
With COVID, it does kind of skew the numbers a little bit because. So the typical rule of thumb calculation for working capital is your current assets less current liabilities. However, you can't always go by that calculation because each business runs a little bit differently. There are some businesses that are heavy asset oriented and it maybe have excess assets. And there are some companies on the other direction who have a lot of liabilities and they're just badly run. So that can skew the numbers. So yeah, I would probably love to have another talk specifically on working capital, maybe some
Yeah.
best, case studies on it. So we could talk a little bit more about that. Um, so we are close to wrapping it up. Any best practice considerations for, let's talk about sellers first,
Right.
right? That are going through an M&A transaction. Give me, one high level best practice, and
I
then
mean, I'm always going to start with professionals, right?
yes.
That having professionals around a transaction that understand M&A, the M&A world, and have been involved in transactions, whether that's legal, accounting, operational, business brokers, the right people around it are the right people, right? And they're going to help you find. And yeah, they cost money, but that money is as well spent as any money you're going to put into a business, right? They're going to get you the higher valuation because they know what they're doing, and they're also going to make sure that the transaction actually finishes, which is the most important thing, right? Because you could spend a whole lot of money, and if you don't complete a transaction, you lost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So professionals are really, for me, probably the number one thing I say on both sides, and then it's really, for the seller side, it's get your house clean, right? Make sure it's ready. Don't go into a transaction just because, and even let's use your example of the son or the daughter that took over because unfortunately the father or the mother passed away that owned the business, right? Somebody passed away, they inherit the business. They immediately say, I don't want to run this business. I want to sell the business. Well, there's probably more cleanup than you know, that if you don't do it, the ability to do a transaction becomes really difficult, and you're never going to get the valuation you should get. That's a
Yeah.
guarantee. And the transaction is just going to be really, really hard to do. I always try to say, like, people don't understand that, uh, $100 million transaction is the same paperwork as $1 million transaction. The due diligence required is the same set of due diligence. Yeah, it's bigger, there's more of it. But honestly, the $1 million business is probably harder to do a deal with than the $100 million business.
So Mark, I'm gonna make a plug for M&A Network.
Yeah,
Actually, this is one of the reasons why I started this close to 5 years ago, was to provide a network of attorneys like yourself, CPAs, advisors, because I've been doing this for 13 years now. You've been doing a little bit longer than I have. And 9 out of 10 of my clients are just not ready on
yeah,
either aspects, legal, financial, like you name it. And if you can help them get ready and not leave money on the table, right? You don't want to fire sell your business. I can't tell you how many times I get calls from clients, and when we tell them what we need to start the process, the preparation we've been talking about today, they either
exactly.
can't get the paperwork together, and a lot of times it's privately held, family-run businesses. Putting the business aside, there's a lot of family dynamic complexities going on there between mother, daughter,
Oh, yeah.
sister, brother, cousins. There's a lot of battles, and it's funny. I don't know if you've been following the Succession series.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
It's funny. I'm not much of a TV guy. I just got put onto it this year, believe it or not. So I've been catching up. I was like, holy crap, man! I was like, it's four kids, and they're all trying to battle for position within the company.
Exactly.
And this stuff really does happen, right? Even though
Every
family
day.
members are not, yeah, it does happen in the real world. So you talk about exit planning, and that's why I'm really happy about our next guest, who's going to be on next week. We're going to talk about exit planning, trust, wills, and states,
That's
because
great. Yeah, it's really important
why
stuff.
why are you in business to begin with, right? It's to maintain your legacy, build generational wealth, and have a lifestyle, right? Maintain your lifestyle and create um, you know create successes for yourself and your family, right? That's the whole purpose. So what's the
Exactly.
use of working so hard if there's no benefit in the back end for your family and generations to come? So we're going to be talking about that. So, but yeah, we started the network to provide a network of top level trusted advisors like Marc, and you will be hearing more from Marc next week. Um, let me see. Any final takeaways that we probably didn't cover that you may want to share?
I think we covered a pretty good amount of,
Okay.
the basics for, what does a buyer and seller need to really think about. And I think if we get through anyone and that's listening and they hear just understanding that they need to get some professionals around, I think we've done our job, right? Really.
Professional and get your house cleaned.
Yeah.
Wash
Clean
the
the
dishes.
house. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want people
Clean out-
coming into your house
clean
with
out the
dirty
closet.
dishes.
Clean out the closet, right? You ever go to one house
that's a big
and the
one,
coat
right?
check is in the bedroom or somewhere? It's like, I'm not putting my coat in there. I'm gonna keep my coat on. You ever been to one house and you just decide to keep your coat on?
Yes, I have.
Clean out the closet, man.
Yeah,
So hey,
exactly.
Marc, I really enjoyed this, and looking forward to actually sitting down with you in person. And
Yeah,
we're gonna go into this in more in depth.
exactly.
Any highlights? What are you gonna be talking about next week?
Well, I think it's a lot. It's some of this, but we're going to go into
Yeah.
some more detail on what does a pitch deck look? What does your exec summary need to look like? What kind of points do you need to make? How do you really prep yourself to make sure that you're going to put yourself in the best position to sell and the best position to buy?
Awesome. So we're going to be in Parsippany, New Jersey,
Yeah.
next Tuesday, 12 p.m. for lunch. So your office is clean, right? We don't need any house
We
cleaning.
are very clean.
Very clean, pristine, and we're going to have some food for our guests. Anyone
Exactly.
that's watching this recording or live, we'll put a code where you can attend as a guest and join us next week, Tuesday. Marc, is definitely a pleasure. I just love having these type of conversations. Just give me chills just talking about it. And I wish more business people actually learn what they need so they can be prepared, because I just hate when they leave money on the table. At the same time, buying a
Absolutely.
business is really tough as well. It's a tough marketplace. You're competing with a lot of sharks there, and you don't want to make bad investments at all, and not doing the proper due diligence and so on, having a good legal counsel. So, Marc, I know you do a lot of events. Do you have anything that's coming up you want to plug before we close off?
Actually, I mean, the next event I have is I'm doing a round table for young entrepreneurs at the Pyramid Club, which is in Philadelphia, next Wednesday night. So that's always a lot of fun.
So you're gonna be busy next week.
I'm gonna be busy next week. Yeah.
All right, Marc, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone that's been listening, appreciate you guys join us. Next week, Wednesday, we'll be joined by Sabine Franco. She is a wills and trust attorney. And then 2 weeks, then the following week, we're going to be speaking with Jim Vigna, who's an expert on SBA finance. And I can't wait to get him here, because with the rates going up, and I want to know what Live Oak Bank is doing and how they're supporting small business owners. So thank you, everyone. And until we see you next week.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.